Welcome to the You Are a Force podcast channel, your go-to space for real stories, fearless dreams, and unstoppable women rewriting the rules. And the force behind this podcast. Here is your host, Binoli Botadara.
Hi everyone, welcome to You Are a Force, the podcast where we celebrate women who turning so-called male-dominated industry in upside down, breaking rules, smashing ceilings, and also making their own headlines. I'm your host Binoli Botadara, and I'm beyond thrilled today to have someone who is a founder and CEO of IMC Consult, a trailblazer who is at the intersection of finance, digital assets, and fearless leadership. With over 20 years of shaping global markets at Goldman Sachs, iShare, ETF securities, and many more, she is a founding member and a former global co-president of Women in ETFs. And also she sits on a lot of advisory boards. She has done a great amount of work in gender equality, but also she's a part of 100 Women at Davos and a network of females rewriting the future of business, technically. So it's my beyond pleasure to invite someone who I look up to and who is an amazing name to reckon with in this space, which is highly dominated by men and which is where I work. So this is something very special to me. So beyond excited to welcome none other than Isabell Moessler. Isabell, thank you so much for having on You Are a Force.
Thank you so much. And you are too kind. This is what an introduction. It's my pleasure to be here.
It's been amazing. And I was just thinking this morning that, it's going to be so fun to actually speak with someone. Usually I have all the guests from across the globe from different industries, and I have to do a lot of research on their backgrounds and that, there are sectors and industries. But this is the first time I'm having someone who pretty much is from the similar field, and I was so excited to pick your brain on so many things, which we are both passionate about. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the very beginning. And when you were growing up, how was it, in terms of your childhood? Did you always dream to get into finance, or were you just maybe thinking or dreaming of being an astronaut or something like really different? And what was the journey like, and how did you land up at Cambridge, being in the MBA classrooms?
Yes, no, actually, but no astronauts. It was actually quite girly, so it was actually quite maybe stereotypical. No, I wanted to become a ballerina. I wanted to become a classical ballet dancer. I trained. I did all my exams of the Royal Academy of Dancing, but and almost up to the professional exams, where then we had to, of course, audition, and it's really brutal. And I'm too tall and too fat. And keep in mind, this was 40 years ago, where I was probably half the size. But turned out very quickly that no, I am not a classical ballet dancer. And then it was pretty much, well, what next? I cut off my hair and I thought, I'm never going to dance again. I hate this. I'd still dance, I must say. It's still a wonderful hobby. But then, I thought, well, okay, so dancing is out of the question. What else? I love traveling. I love different cultures. And in my head, I thought, oh, I'm going to go into the diplomatic service. To be honest, having no idea what that actually meant. I just fancied the living abroad and traveling, and again, did a bit of research. Turns out, oh, that's not really, all the politics, which, seems pretty obvious, but how it is. Sometimes you think things in your mind and then they're not exactly the way or they turn out the way they actually are. So then I thought, well, still international business, that would be something, and it's a good foundation you need it for many things. So this is how I started. It was really the international angle. It was the sort of looking broader than where I grew up. I grew up in Germany, and but then spent some time in the US, and my dad's Austrian. So there's been sort of a mixture of kind of nationalities and everything right from the get-go. And then, yeah, just very traditional, I guess, beginning, sort of went to university, did my undergraduate studies, started work, then went back to business school, and yeah, then
Love that.
it kind of started, or I started in the city right after my undergraduate studies, so first job, analyst at Goldman's, and did all those long hours and everything, which was true then, still true now. But yeah, it was a good foundation.
Yeah, love that. Love that. I'm also a trained dancer. While growing up, I wanted to become a dancer like you.
See?
And it was so much fun. And I genuinely think that I dance to express, not to impress. And it's just my happy space. But very early on, I thought that I would not make so much money as a dancer.
Yes.
So I wanted to become a fashion designer. And then I realized that, it might not be something very intellectual because every time, people would, I grew up in India and in a business family, and every dinner table conversations used to be around markets. And I was like, this is quite intellectual and interesting. And then that's why I ended up going in science and then taking a detour into finance, which is completely bizarre. So I've done like almost every aspect of creative to finance to science to everything. So I totally
I
relate.
love that. And I hope you still keeping that creative streak alive, or
I
the dancing
do.
as well.
I do. I love going to the museums. I do. I mean, I used to paint as well. Now I think a 5 years old child can do better than me. But I do like the cultural side, and like technically learning something new in
Yeah.
terms of the creative side. And I also love traveling. And I think the most beautiful part about travel is immerse into the culture and you learn so much. I mean, which I totally understand. And because I also love traveling, I wanted to become an air hostess at one point because I thought I would get to travel for free. So,
Yeah, see, this is what I had in mind with my sort of diplomacy hat on. Very
oh,
much the
yeah,
Ferrero Rocher, for those of you who remember the very old advert. It's like you host parties and beautiful villas, and
what
yeah, no,
else you
well,
need? Yeah, absolutely.
exactly.
So, how was the experience at Cambridge, and what is the one thing you learned at Cambridge which prepared you for the city, which is not perhaps in a classroom, outside classroom, or any experience you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think this was more, you need both. You need the, like I said, sort of very the academics, the foundations, the subject matter knowledge. You need all of that. But then also, I think in the city, or I guess it's true in any profession, you also need to be able to think on your feet.
Yeah.
Like stuff with the best laid plans, you have a great strategy, you have it all mapped out, tons of Excel spreadsheets. It doesn't happen, or it doesn't always happen. So, and I think that bit, mm, like you said as well, I love traveling and going exploring different countries, cultures, and there, if you make your plan, it is sometimes it doesn't happen, and then you're stuck, you're somewhere where nobody speaks your language, and I don't know, and this is also, keep in mind, sometimes when I talk to my kids now and I say I was stuck and I couldn't make myself understood, and they're like, yeah, but why didn't you use Google Translate? I'm like, it didn't exist. We had the Lonely Planet guides to help us from A to B. There was no Google Maps. um but I think that experience, sometimes to be totally
Prepares you.
out of your comfort zone and
Yeah.
really like, oh man, I didn't see this coming. I think that's a really good thing also in business, because
Yeah.
it will happen. You've prepared everything and then you get thrown this total curveball, and you have to deal with it. So I think that was a skill which, and it can't really be taught in a classroom,
No,
no
no.
matter, you do case studies and then you try to prepare for it, but it's never like when you're there and you're like, what do I do now?
I agree. I agree. Oh my God. So I grew up in a city called Ahmedabad, just the western part of India, and it's a business entrepreneurial city, state, everything. But the financial capital is Mumbai, and the day I actually broke the silence and I told my parents that I want to move to Bombay because my company is promoting me. And it was like moving to a different planet.
Wow.
Every person actually told me, well, why? You don't need money. Why do you need to go to Bombay and work? Like, what's wrong with you? My friends, family, strangers, neighbors' dog, like whoever I saw, everyone is like, why? And it was such an experience, I would say tougher than, I mean, it made me who I am today. Those 10 years of working in Mumbai, and especially if you're a single woman, that city really, really is very tough. You have to figure out everything. And I was in such a cocoon and, very protected environment. But my mother was the only person who actually supported me, not my dad. My dad was completely against. He made me cry almost every week to come back. And I was like, no, I mean, I am doing really well. I'm in the financial capital of the country and I'm striving and I'm not going to come back. And then 10 years later, when everything started to settle down, I was like, okay, now I want to study. So I moved to the UK and I did my second master's at London Business School. And that again was a different change. And when I was looking for roles in the city, honestly, Isabel, I thought that I was a star in India. I was doing so well. After London Business School, people are going to line outside to hire me, which clearly didn't happen. So that itself was so important to actually be grounded, makes you humble and prepares you for some things which you've not prepared for, and I think it is so important. And working in the UK versus India, I had to unlearn so many things and then learn so many things, on the go. You're overwhelmed, language, people, and it's, how it is, our industry is very male dominated. On top of it, asset management, hedge funds are like typically white men, not even from cross cultures that you have people from, Africa, India, whatever, China. No. So it was quite an overwhelming, but it really, shapes you very instantly. You blend into different things, and that doesn't happen if you're not open to change.
Yeah, fully agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And after working for almost 2 decades in Goldman Sachs, iShares, and many other organizations, where literally many women would dream of, you decided to actually start your own firm, and that is like an amazing thing. So what was that trigger, or what was that moment where you thought that, okay, I'm not going to continue this and I'm going to, launch IMC Consult?
For me, the consideration was, I guess, more flexibility, more freedom. After spending those decades in big corporate structures, it really was a case of I want to work. I need to work. I need to contribute. I want to contribute with my expertise, but at the same time, on my terms. So there was this bit of a very selfish streak with that. And I really think for me, given sort of where I am in my career, it was lower risk of doing that because, I've done many roles. I have a great network. I've met some fantastic people, and I really enjoyed. So for me, if you look at it, I started in big organizations, and what that did was I got to work with some amazing people. I really got to learn. I had a peer group, superiors, good bosses, bad bosses. It really gives you the whole ecosystem of, this is what it's about. So I really enjoyed that. Some bits, of course, I didn't enjoy because you will also encounter people, there's problems, or you figure out, like, some people all they're interested in is furthering their career. It's not even about achieving the team goal or the company goal or whatever. So, but working in big organizations gives you all that exposure. So I really think it's fantastic, and I really enjoyed it. But then also for now, I thought, okay, I want to be part of this. I can contribute. I can really figure out where can I, sort of who might benefit from my knowledge, not full time, because also you have some organizations, and this is then when you move away from the big
Yeah.
corporations into more of the startups. Um, they're looking for experienced people, but they can't actually afford somebody full time or bring in somebody. So, you can do more fractional work, or
Right.
so it really was the flexibility. And I must say, I have a lot of respect and admiration for people who are very young and say, no, I have my own company, I'm doing this. And really the confidence, and that they're really, convinced that this is something they want to do.
Mm.
And sort of this entrepreneurial spirit became very late in my career. I never thought I would do my own thing. But it's also a journey. This is why sometimes especially
Yeah.
when you go for interviews and more early on, when people ask you, oh, where do you see yourself in 5, 10 years? Who knows? There's like, how are
I
you
agree.
supposed to figure this out?
I agree absolutely. Now people ask me, where do you see 5 years down the line? Say, I don't know. Did we know about the COVID? Nobody knew. And
Yeah,
if you would have asked me in 2022 that, where do you see, or 21 actually in January, who knew the world is going to be
yeah,
upside down, right? And five
yeah,
years
yeah.
in today's day and age is too long a time also.
I don't know. And it's also, I don't think it's a fair question, because it's not linear. It's more, things happen along the way, and then you
Yeah,
you adjust, or you need to. I don't
navigate.
know. I always think, if somebody would have said, "Well, can you spec this out?" No, you give some answer. But
Yeah,
is that really
true.
valuable? Uh,
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And more power to you for doing that and listening to your gut and taking that risk, because you were at the top of your game into the corporate world, and it's not never easy to actually go out of your comfort zone. So and this is so amazing that you have actually advised the large corporates and also the nimble startups, right, in your current work. Since you've worked into the large corporates inside and now you look at them from outside, so what do you think is something which, according to you, that the large organization, multinational companies actually lack, or they fail because of one particular common thread? Is it culture? Is it adaptation with the new technology, or lack of capital? What do you think is like one common theme?
Mm, and here it's a well-used metaphor, but for big organizations, it is like that old oil tanker and making it turn. And because you need to bring everybody with you. So there's for sure the cultural aspect, there is technology, there is, depends on what industry you're in, but it really is nothing you can just make a quick tweak and then everybody's aligned.
Yeah.
Where I've seen good examples is where there was a lot of communication from the get-go. People knew what was going on. They knew why those decisions were being made. And again, you never convince everybody. There'd always be like pros and cons,
Sure.
but I really think um, culture and transparency are those key issues. Of course, capital and resources, and
Yeah.
all of that plays into it as well. But you see that if companies want to change course, or you see it even more so when you have mergers, acquisitions. You can model everything on a spreadsheet. It looks great and it makes total sense. And the P&Ls and the financial statements, they look great. But on
Mm.
a day-to-day basis, if you don't make sure you again the teams gel, or
Yeah.
you have a common understanding, this I think this is really the biggest hurdle. And when I was
Yeah.
working for Euronext at that time, Euronext was making many acquisitions. So at that time, the Irish Stock Exchange, and then Oslo Bourse, and then just before I left, Borsa Italiana. All of that, you have to put people first, is
Mm.
my true belief. We think, oh, it's all data and algorithms and everything is like it's still people business. And
Yeah,
yeah, so I think really putting the focus on that
sure.
sets you off. It's still no guarantee for success, but it
I'm sure.
sets you off on a good path.
Yeah, yeah. And I think the key is execution, right? You can have brilliant
Mm,
idea, but if you cannot execute with people, with building culture, I think that,
mm.
yeah, really plays a big role. And speaking of that, Warren Buffett always say, or once he has very famously said that only when the tide goes out, you actually discover who has been swimming naked, right? And that is very applicable, especially in the startup space. And since you've worked with a lot of founders, what do you think that the most something which a lot of ambitious founders make mistake, apart from just having the basic skill sets or money, but what do you think is like something they do which really goes into their not in their favor? And what is the one skill you think that differentiates a successful founder versus somebody who did not make it to the final destination?
Yeah, I think you, as a founder, of course, you start out and you have this idea, and you're really convinced, and then you're bringing people along on that journey, and I think that the skill in your head is you need to understand that in those different chapters, you need different skill sets. You might need different people. If it all goes to plan and you're hugely successful and you're scaling and you're growing, inadvertently, if you start out with, the founders or a couple of people in a room, they are all 100% in on your mission.
Yeah.
They really, they live and breathe and and really put everything into that company. But then you grow, you bring other people on board.
Mm.
Um, and you almost and you hear that, and it's sort of also well understood in startup space. The people you have on board at the beginning are your missionaries. They're
Yeah.
fully bought in, and then sometimes the criticism is, oh, and then you bring in mercenaries who are in it for the money or in it for career advancement or whatever. They want to be associated with something
Mm.
cool happening. Um, and that's not necessarily a bad thing because you're never going to have an army of missionaries.
Right.
So, just the realization of that's not a bad thing. You need to make sure that the original
Yeah.
identity and the culture gets multiplied, and you need your champions there and still, sort of bringing the original idea into the wider organization. But it really is sometimes a challenge because you will along that journey, and again, best case scenario, you're growing, you will lose some people. You
Right.
will lose probably
Of
your
course.
super valuable person from day one
Yeah.
because they choose to be in a small startup. They
Yeah.
want to be there on day one. They
Right.
don't want to be part of a big or bigger
Organization.
organization where
Right.
you then have to have weekly meetings and but I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. You just need to realize it. And I think the other one, and that's a well researched phenomenon, is founder's dilemma. When do you, as a founder, let go? When do you step back? When do you realize, or you're humble enough to recognize that, hey, the business is bigger than what I can handle right now. So I need to hand over the reins. And I totally get it. This is tough. It's your baby. You've
Yeah.
brought this to life. But it really, I think this is where some founders really struggle to then
Mm.
also acknowledge that somebody else might be better at running the
Yeah.
company at that
Mm.
stage than they are.
Correct. Yeah. So giving the control,
Mm,
I think a key. Very true. And
yeah.
Isabel, your career really spans now between the traditional finance and digital, world or digital assets. They say like TradFi and then DeFi. So
Mm,
there's so much going on in that space right now. And for example, Bitcoin's actually started in 2010, and I think after 3,000 years, we have seen like a new currency or new sort of, something so drastic emerging, which is phenomenon. Not only just phenomenon, and it is here to stay, but there's something called tokenization where you actually are into the scheme of things. And Larry Fink actually, I think last week said that it's going to be a time where we're going to have tokenization of everything, not just the crypto or not just bitcoins or gold, which is currently are the two assets, but maybe real estate, maybe every asset class, who knows, equities. But there is a huge gap right now. So can you tell us like what's going on in that world, and how do you see, because still it's quite a tip of an iceberg, hasn't been accepted so well by investors. So what do you think is the single most mindset obstacle which you see in the adoption of this asset class?
Yeah. Oh my God, we could have a whole podcast just around this topic, I think. But I'll share you sort of my high level views, and always makes me smile how now Larry Fink is the biggest cheerleader for Bitcoin, for digital assets, for tokenization, which is great. It's great for also a lot of startups, which because as soon as BlackRock stepped into that space, it sort of legitimized
True.
the whole industry. But pros and cons and challenges. But you say in terms of the obstacle and in terms of the mindset, which might inhibit or dampen the adoption a little bit. I think here sometimes it's still, even when you look at the tokenization of real world assets, does that mean everything else is fake world assets? Or it already is sort of, we need to be careful even with what we're talking about. If you hear or you read, especially media need to play a role as well, because many times you read a headline with crypto, it's always negatives, always scams and hacks and people lost money.
Yeah.
If you hear digital assets, it's always, oh, the future of finance, and this is where everything's going. So we have to be careful. But I think there needs to be still a lot of education, but people are on it. Like, this is really big organizations, big, very traditional houses. I don't think anybody can afford to still be of that mindset of, we're not doing this. Because it's no longer a question of,
Yeah.
oh, what is crypto? Is it a fad? It'll go away.
Yeah.
No, it won't. And that's well understood. So I think we've passed that hurdle. But the other thing is, really, at the moment, it's the driver is the supply side. So, with tokenization of, for example, money market funds or real estate, or, it's proven, it works, it's there. The demand side is not yet there. And not because they don't want to or they don't accept it, but because you need to have all the infrastructure, you need to have all the piping. And here I'm pretty much thinking about sort of in the financial world, the setup. You have many other use cases for the technology and for blockchain. You can go into, I don't know, supply chain management or virtual identity, and there's so many aspects to it. But just sticking with the world we know well, people would love to accept or invest via a token or in tokenized form, but in terms of custody, in terms of trading and settlement, and all those things need to be in place, and it's being worked on. There's fantastic companies out there that are stepping into that space, that are getting licensed, and it'll come. But it takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. But I really think it'll converge, and the stepping stone were the exchange traded products on crypto underlying. I really believe they were so successful because the demand is there, and all of a sudden you could satisfy this demand via the existing channels. So via regulated exchanges with the same brokers, with the same accounts. But I'm very bullish as well. I mean, you probably expect that given my background, but I really think, and the other thing is, in the early days, you always get hung up on technology, and I can't claim I'm no, technologist, programmer, whatever.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the cool stuff people get very excited about. Most of us don't understand
Understand.
and
That's
really also don't have to understand.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
we don't need to know all the code behind it. You want to know it's secure, it's trustworthy, it does what it claims to do,
yeah, yeah.
but we don't all need to be knowledgeable in the nitty-gritty.
No, fair, fair. I totally am with you on that. And I want to double click on this because you mentioned that, a lot of large corporates are going into it. And Jamie Dimon also last week, I think, mentioned about everything going into this. And JP Morgan is investing so much into the whole technology of tokenization. But I personally think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that till the time the central banks would not, they are the largest entities, right? Or approval sort of, I mean, they are the ones who actually would put the seal or rather a stamp. So I personally think, and that right now we're having a lot of interest from institutional investors, sovereign wealth fund, family offices, and so on. But till the time, perhaps central banks do not go all in, perhaps the retail investors might be skeptical of stepping into this world. Do you believe that?
Um, Actually, quite the opposite.
Really?
From what we've seen is you normally have, if you want to call it like a financial innovation or whatever, or like a new asset class coming onto the scene, it's usually sort of institutional first and then it kind of filters down into the retail space. I
Mm-hmm.
think with crypto, it's gone the other way around. It was almost more of a grassroots movement, and now the institutions are catching up. And really, when just take the UK, we're both based in London. It's only a few weeks ago until the FCA finally lifted the retail ban, and you can now buy via your brokerage crypto ETNs, as you need to designate them here in the UK. But before that, people were buying crypto, just not on the regulated exchanges. But there's so much, and people are really knowledgeable. And this is also, it probably comes more into, the generational shift of investors as well. Many investors get it. You want to trade it. You want to, have sort of the instant access. And so I think there it's actually the other way around. But of course, many retail traders, you need a lot of volume in order to then match a big ticket from an institutional investor. But I really think here it's almost more bottom up than top down. But and again, that from a regulation and regulators' point of view, it is consumer protection, and that's absolutely their mandate, and that's what they're
Yeah.
doing. And it is people. You need to know what you're doing. At the moment, the user experience, the whole UX, is it needs improvement, but people are working on it. It's well
No.
recognized because it is not intuitive. And do you really want to spend a lot of time, a lot of risk? What if I type the address wrong? My coins get lost. So, but I really think it's super exciting. And it will happen. I'm sure of that. And then also, really, as with any new innovation, once we don't recognize that we're transacting on a blockchain, but
Mm,
I can send you money, or I buy a service, or I pay my bills with this. How it works in the background, is then insignificant. But I think really there, and again, coming to the infrastructure and everything, or the plumbing that goes into making this work and making it look simple, that's
mm.
being worked on right now.
Yeah, no, I love that. And thanks for throwing light on this because it's such an interesting time and I feel that we're in, just such an opportune time to enter into this space, to actually maximize and optimize this opportunity. But
Yeah.
speaking of something which you are very passionate about, which is ETF, and
Yep.
ETF has seen the surge in last couple of years and how I think currently 18.8 trillions of assets are into the ETF structure. And I think in the passive strategies, which are currently everyone wants to get into for the safety, for all the not like nuisance going on over the world, like wars, tariffs, everything. Almost 40% of the equity market is actually into the passive funds like ETFs. So why do you think this structure suddenly got, not suddenly, but got popular in the recent times? And not only just for the family offices or institutional money, but retail investors, apart from safety and the fees, what do you think is like a one core reason why people are actually finding this as a safe haven?
And it almost comes back to my previous answer with, because it's an easy access vehicle. It's really the way with ETFs, the way you buy and sell it, you have a lot of the neo brokers or even established houses putting them onto their platforms. So, just from your phone, you can manage your portfolio, you can add or buy or sell the product. So it's the ease of access. Of course, you mentioned cost, it's very low cost, it's transparent. You are still tied to, or in not in all cases, big caveat, because sometimes you can trade more than during the regulated trading hours. But it's it's easy. People have understood the value of investing. Thankfully, little steps, but the education around finance and financial markets and sort of this understanding is growing, or there are initiatives that are really pushing and making sure people understand. So I think that really helped with the adoption, and you really see, and now some of the clients I'm working with, and also with my partners at SPY, big institutions, or say a very traditional asset manager, they're getting demand for, well, or questions around what is your ETF offering? Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Geez, I had no idea that this would happen. So again, I'm back. Uh, yes, so there are cases where really it's access, it's the understanding, it's the knowledge, it's ease of use. So
Yeah.
I think that all of that contributed. And there's also new ideas. You mentioned the massive part of passive ETFs, which do make up the majority of the assets under management in the ETF space. But you have many new entrants on the active side. You have crypto ETPs, you have, quite, I would say, sophisticated, if you will, financial structures, CLOs wrapped into an ETF. There's many ideas. So I think ETFs, we sometimes associate them with benchmark
Yeah.
ETFs, S&P 500,
Yeah.
FTSE 100, but it's just the wrapper. And within the regulation, there are many more assets you can put into that wrapper and then make it accessible. So I think all of that, and it will continue. It really is something people are looking at. And then coming back full circle to the tokenization piece is, well, if you look at different distribution channels, would you then want to tokenize an ETF? Which I'm kind of skeptical, because it's a wrapper on a wrapper. But if it makes it easier for people to get into those investments, I guess why not?
Yeah, that's interesting. I did not think that ETFs would be tokenized, but I think it's interesting. And like you said, that this wrapper allows so many different asset classes. Recently, I was reading in Forbes that one of the hedge funds based out of New York, their underlying assets are Birkins and Kellys, and that's what they have started. And that's such an interesting asset class. I never thought that the handbags would become an asset class. That's so interesting. And to actually be in that space, or to create, and they're, I think, creating under the ETF as well. So very, very interesting times.
There you go. You can either buy it or you can buy it as an ETF.
Why is it? Yeah, because I don't think everyone has those 15, 20,000, dollars or pounds to actually invest in a bag. So yeah, why not?
No, fractional ownership is totally a
Fractional,
thing.
yeah, even that makes you happy. Why not?
Yeah, yeah.
But But Isabel, I really want to pick something which is very personal to me or to my heart, that we both work in the city. We both work in the asset management investments world. And in India, I used to be one in a room of 100 people, like 99 men, and I used to be one. And when I started working in the city, I'm one of the 10 girls. And then, so still there is a huge shift towards not the gender equality. I mean, we're still talking about it, but it's not there. So my question to you is that, was there a particular moment or an experience which made you realize that there's a huge, systemic bias, or there is an invisible barrier for women, and then you started or co-founded Women in ETFs, which now has over 12,000 members. So can you tell us, like, what was the reason, and when or what made you do it?
And you give me too much credit. I was one of a fantastic group of ladies where the thinking initially was actually around a discussion around we need an industry association for ETFs. So it wasn't even kind of the gender angle that came into it, but that didn't come about for various reasons. But because at the time it was such a small industry, and even to this day, so many people you work as colleagues and competitors and clients, and so we all knew each other, and there were a lot of discussions. And then it was actually a fantastic group of ladies who are now the emeritus board of Women in ETFs, and I said we need to do something about this. If we men and women can't get our act together, let's start this Women in ETFs. And there was huge debates also on the name, and do we allow men to join the network? Yes, 100%. And we need, allies. This is about all of us. But I think really the drive was to help each other, to make ourselves visible, to raise the issue. And believe me, we had a lot of challenging questions, sarcastic comments, and the ladies. It's like, no, but we're here, we're doing this, and it's the tagline of Women in ETFs. It's really to support, to inspire, to connect each other, and men and women. This is really not us versus them kind of setup.
Yeah.
But we really thought we need to lift this to a different level. We really need to make sure it's equality. People get to know about opportunities.
So,
People get to know about trends in the industry. If you look at the very many events the organization is running across the globe, sometimes it is a social event and it really furthers the connection. Sometimes it's a really specific topic we discuss and get different experts in, and so it increases everybody's knowledge, or inspire each other. And I'm sure, and I hope you have a great network behind you. Sometimes you just need to hear that bit of like, just go and do it. What's the worst
yeah.
that can happen? So it takes all of those roles, and yes, it's really fun to be involved. I stepped back from the global co-president role, but that was more for in terms of time commitment. It wasn't because I don't buy into the vision and the mission, and it's fun as well. It's the making the connections, and it's genuine connections. It's not I'm going to add another 20 people on LinkedIn. It's like, no, actually we have something in common. There's a discussion going on. We can help each other.
I love that, and I'm going to join that as well.
Yes, please.
I did not know about this till I started researching on you, because that's very true. Because male allyship are also equally important, because you cannot survive just being in a silo in a corner, because you do need. And some of the men I've worked with are incredibly understanding, helpful, supportive, and I genuinely believe that's essential in today's time. And so therefore I also want to pick up on the mentor versus the sponsors. So in your entire career, do you think that women hesitate most of the times to actually ask for a favor or mentorship or guidance. They don't really easily tend to go. So how do you think that, one should actually look for the mentors or sponsors within the organization or outside, particularly women? Because in my experience, I never used to ask, I never used to raise my hand that I have done this, what most men do it, right? Even if they've done 50%, they would go out and say it. So I never used to do it. I'm learning. I'm still not there. So maybe if you can, through your experiences, if you can share.
Yes, and same. Sometimes we really have to remind ourselves, it's like we need to practice what we preach. We really need to, like you say, raise your hand, point out. And in terms of mentor and sponsorship, I also think there's no shortcuts. So because when you then raise your hand and when you ask somebody to be your mentor or your sponsor, or ideally it's more of an organic relationship that develops. You need to have something in common. It doesn't just work where I don't know you, because if you look at it from a mentor, sponsors, especially sponsors' point of view, they put their reputation on the line as
Yeah.
well. And you only do that for somebody, I don't know, you've worked with, or they've shown you that they're up to the
Hmm.
task. And so I really think people need to be senior people, men and women need to be open to this. But then also you need to earn it. You need to be in a position where you can demonstrate, yeah, no, I'm ready. I'm for whatever it is, the promotion, the new job, the more responsibility, whatever you're thriving, and then have somebody in a room where those decisions are made, or even outside, social events. Somebody says, "Oh, I've heard about Binoli running the podcast," and then me saying, "Oh my God, it's fantastic," and she's had amazing speakers, but in order for me to do that, we kind of need to have that
Yeah.
connection. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I really think it's it's on both parts. Like I said, senior people who, or, doesn't always need to be, we don't need to think in hierarchies, but somebody who can act as a sponsor needs to be open to it, but also
Hmm.
then you need to have shown that you're there.
Yeah,
It's
your
it's a,
work.
yeah,
Yeah, or
yeah,
hard work or character. True. True. And
yeah,
like you
yeah.
said, that, people put their reputation at risk to
Mm,
actually help you, support you. But I believe that I think networking is the key. I genuinely believe that
mm,
network is your net worth. And if you are,
yeah,
so therefore, I think likes of ETF, women in ETFs really play a very significant role, in terms of
yeah,
creating your sort of ecosystem where you can bounce ideas or grow, and so on. And also, these opportunities open up lot of other doors for you, which you have not even anticipated. And
yeah.
one of them is like being on board, and then you are a seasoned board advisor. So how did you sort of get the first seat on the table? How did you get an access to those sort of opportunities? And if you can maybe share one or two hacks, what one can do to sort of get into that ultimately a very high power position.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it. It's network, it's who you know, it's being upfront about it. And sometimes that might seem really weird or uncomfortable, but if that's something you would like to do, tell somebody about it, because then they know. And of course, it doesn't happen immediately where they turn
Yeah.
around, it's like, oh, I have this board position, or even advisor position. Super competitive market, and also there, be under no illusion. But I think what you can do is look at the startup space. Look, and there's especially in London, we're so fortunate. There's so many events. Go and meet some of those founders. Try and figure out what do they do. If nothing else, you learn tons, or you get new ideas. Ideally you make a connection, you help somebody from, I don't know, even going from 2 to 4 people, and I don't know, from a product idea to the first launch. So I think starting small and really getting the experience and the connections. You can also, if you are in a position, do some angel investing. And here, big shout out to Alma Angels. They're a great organization where, and we think maybe VC type of investments. No, you can actually start quite small, and people are raising funds on a much more realistic money scale rather than huge hundreds of thousands and millions. No, no, no. You can. There's the other end of the spectrum. That's an idea. That's just something. Look at it. How if you give some money, then of course you want to know, well, what are you going to do with my money? And this is how a conversation starts. And we all have. And also, what's very important is you need people with different backgrounds. So if you look at the makeup of a board, you always have ideally people where there's not groupthink. And many of the very successful boards now, you have good diversity across,
Gender.
gender,
Yeah.
background, education, stages of career, and because you need all of those voices in the room. But I think really start small, try it out, have some conversations. There's a lot of online material out there. Also, what is required, what do you need, what are the roles and responsibilities? Because this is the other thing. Being on a board sounds great,
Fancy.
but responsibilities come with it.
True.
This is a real thing, and you are in part, you are the critical voice of the leadership team, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think you need to take serious.
No, I agree. I agree because while I was with Janice Anderson in investment trust, all are listed on the exchange, right? All the companies or the funds, and therefore
Mm,
they have the boards. And then I used to deal with the board members, so I totally understand that it's not a passion project or hobby. You really
yeah.
have to be available and invested into that role. But it's so important. The fabric of boards are changing, like you said, that 47% of the boards have at least 2 or 3 women on the board, but only
Mm,
19% of the chairs are women, even today.
mm.
So, which is, I mean, yes, the 47% looks really nice, but still, I mean, there's a lot to cover up there. But speaking of that, the data is the next gold or oil or whatever you want to say. And you advise also equally on gender equality and diversity. And so where do you see still blind spots when it comes to diversity in the large corporates, or the way, because there are implicit biases as well, right? So how are you advising companies to actually overcome that?
Yeah, and equally, well, recently they joined Denominator. They're now part of a bigger group of companies, which is super exciting. And what you will have seen is also the shift from it. It started out more on the gender lens, but then really widened out, and really it is about equality in every sense. And sometimes we reduce it down to the more visible differentiators, male, female, black, white, all of those. But I think the good thing is there's a lot of realization now that it's not that simple. It's also neurodiversity. You have many different angles. Companies who do it well have a recognition of all of those. I know it's a little bit fallen out of favor, unfortunately, with big US firms, only given the political backdrop. But at the same time, we've come a long way. Sometimes when I hear the statistics, makes me a bit sad and a bit deflated. And it's like, oh God, we're still talking about this, and have we really made progress? But my hope is also for a more generational shift. It'll never be easy. You always
Yeah.
have kind of more dominant groups, and that can be men, women,
Yeah.
I don't know, young employees, old employees,
Sure,
whatever
sure.
it is. They will in one organization form the culture, but that is not set in stone. I think as long as we realize that there are nuances and there are things, and the great thing is that, for example, Equilibo, now within the bigger group of companies, there is data against it. This is not a nice to have. This is really, it goes straight to your bottom
Mm,
line. And I think when you make that connection, you win the argument. So it's easier than, it's just
sure.
a nice fluffy
Supported by
stuff. No,
numbers.
no, no. It's hard numbers. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
like
not
I
a
said, they're
myth.
nice to have.
Yeah, it's not a myth or a perception. There is numbers to back, and I
Yeah.
agree. I had Vivian, who is a FTSE 100 Women's Review CEO, and she won an OB. And I was talking to her, and that's when I identified that in FTSE 100 companies, there are more Johns than number of women.
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
imagine? And I was like, this is
Yes.
so depressing. But like you said, still we're talking about it. That itself is a big deal. That, there is a possible tangible change which is coming. And I think more and more, like we talk about the numbers and the data and how effective it is, I think the needle will move. Maybe slowly, but we'll get there.
We will get there. And then talking about it, so highlighting it, and then also taking the actions. And, sometimes also, yeah, you need to put yourself forward and
Yeah.
follow through on things. So, yeah, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, yeah. And not be bothered with the labels. So many times
Yeah.
people tell me, "Oh, you're a feminist." So yeah, so everyone should be feminist. Why do you feel that it's a bad thing, We're just
Yeah.
talking about equality.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good for everyone. It's not preferring one or the other. Or yeah.
Yeah, true, true. And also, you are also a part of a very influential community, which is 100 Women at Davos, which I have been fascinating to go one day, maybe. But how is it to actually go to Davos? And did you have any experience which was like truly, powerful or made you like in awe of something which we don't really get to read in the FT or get to see on the TV?
I mean, it's obviously it's a huge gathering, very influential global decision makers from politics, from finance, from industry, from everywhere. Um, and there's a lot going on. I think it's still a bit crazy that all of this happens in a tiny mountain village in Switzerland, but it's good because you're very in a very confined space. And I think the magic of this is you have these chance encounters which wouldn't happen. Like in London, you would never bump into that person.
Yeah.
Um, it's really a case of you go there with a plan. Of course, you go there with your agenda. It's busy days, morning to night. You start with breakfast, you end with dinner, and everything in between. And it's networking, it's pitching, it's pretty full on. But I also think for a lot of us, and we do this with our group of 100 women in Davos, we always say keep some time for those chance encounters. Keep some
Mm,
time where you sit maybe in a presentation on a topic you know nothing about. Just sit there. What's the worst that can happen? That you've wasted 20 minutes or not, or you've totally opened your horizon or think about something, have a conversation with somebody which you wouldn't normally have. We all get so blinkered in our own industry.
love that.
So I think that is really for me the most valuable. Sometimes like, well, can you put a number against it? Is it worth it? Hotels are crazy expensive, and I usually can't afford to stay in Davos. I need to travel back and forth. But I think those little things you can't plan, those are worth it, and making those connections.
Love that. I'm manifesting that I get to go next time.
Yes, yes, do it.
But it's amazing because, like you said, connections and the encounters, which I genuinely think can actually open up so many opportunities and avenues, and things which we discuss there, or we meaning like are things which are discussed there. which are so ahead of the times, and it really is amazing to know that. But looking back, what was it one moment, Isabel, in your career or in your personal life, which was an absolute disaster at that moment, and you thought that why this is happening to me kind of thing? But looking back, you recognize that, oh my God, thank God that happened. And what was a learning?
There's been many. And this is the other thing where we always present in the introduction, you so kindly, painted all this picture and oh, this is Isabel. But it's not all wonderful. It really isn't. It's for
Yeah,
nobody. And we need to recognize that. And I heard a fun term which, really made me think there's this toxic positivity. Where does it always have to be positive? This is not real life. Things don't are not always positive. So no, there's been some total car crashes, and I think give you some examples. Sort of one time, I thought this was a promotion, it's totally in the bag, and then I didn't get it. Oh my God. Or one time with a boss, and eventually I left the company. He in a meeting threw me completely under a bus, even though we had agreed a totally different kind of strategy beforehand. Things like that. It happens. It happens. Uh, do you feel like it's the end of the world in a moment? Yes. When after that meeting where this happened, I had to leave the office. I was walking down the road. I was crying my eyes out. So it's like I say, it's real life. You have highs and lows and everything in
yeah.
between. But I think the main thing, and sounds pretty obvious, you have to pick yourself up. You have to keep going. You have to think, why did this happen? What can I do different next time?
Mm.
Um, yeah, it's not nice in the moment, but it's also what do you make of it? And
Yeah,
you
I think
know,
resilience, right?
mm,
That's the key. And because you have to deal with the cards you are given, but
yeah,
how you come back, every time
yeah,
after a fall, I think that's yeah, I totally resonate with it because in my career, everything I wanted to, it did not happen then,
yeah,
and it took a detour, but I'm very happy where I've landed or where I
mm,
am. But it wasn't easy where there were so many ups and downs, so many constraints from family, from friends, from whatever, your personal life, your boyfriend disasters. And of course, once my boss tried hitting on me, so I left without having a job. And there were so many million things,
yeah.
but you don't take everything personally. I think that's what I've learned, that it's their loss. And I saw a reel, which actually I almost see that more often. Because there's a person interviewing a person, and then at Harvard or some school and for a job at maybe Goldman or some investment bank, and then humiliates the person on the other side who is like a management trainee kind of position, and continuously does that. But eventually that boy tells him that, I'm going to win. You give me a job or you don't. It doesn't matter. And I'm just trying to tell you in short, but it's a beautiful clip. I'll share it with you because it really, gave me so much of affirmation that no, he's right, you are giving me opportunity or not. It's gonna be like one small piece in my puzzle, but that's not gonna make who I am, right? So that's
Incredible. I don't think I would have had that approach or that sort of response. So, this is really impressive because I would have been the,
Yeah, yeah. But that we all have been that, right? And then eventually you come out and you realize that, it's their loss eventually.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
I'm gonna figure out another way. And before I end this conversation, something very, very important and which is on everyone's minds, which is AI. And we have seen the rise of crypto, but do you see with the AI any other seismic shift which is on the horizon into the financial markets? And perhaps not in 5 years, but maybe in 2, 3 years' time?
Over the next, it's sort of estimated three decades, you will see the big wealth transfer to younger generations, to women, to so that the makeup of your client base will look very different. And I think this is what is well understood, what some of the very forward-looking organizations are already addressing and or getting ready for. I think that will really make a change to or really influence our industry because all of a sudden, is how do people want to be approached? How do people want to receive information? What are their goals? Is it profit only? Is it, investing for good? Is it? So I think that will really drive some major changes in addition to all the technological advances, and they go hand in hand. They will pair up in terms of, immediacy of data. I want this data now. I don't want to receive a quarterly report of how my mutual fund is doing. No, who
Sure.
wants that? So I think that's one of the big things, but it's also, this is not is something nobody has realized. This is really very well understood and people are working on it, but it'll be interesting. I think it'll be really, is it more democratizing finance? Will it be able to bring more people in? I hope so, but we'll have to see.
I love that. Yeah, because what got you here is not going to get you there, right? So
Mm,
you have to evolve with everything which is changing around you. But on
yeah.
that note, before we wrap up, what is our one piece of advice you would give it to every woman who is listening today, maybe entering into the finance or already surviving in this, dominating industry, demanding industry? What is a one piece of advice you would give?
Negotiate your salary always. You're worth it.
Oh my God.
Negotiate. And here I must say I've learned it the hard way. I didn't practice what I preach now. Um, do it. It feels awful. You've earned it. We're coming up to bonus discussions and everything. Be ready. Ask for more. When you think you're outrageous, you're probably at the right number. So just go for it.
Oh my God, it really gave me goosebumps because that's the biggest regret I have in my life. Every single time I've cried, I've sulked, I've done everything. And I think that's also a very gender thing because most women would fight for everyone else. I used to
Yeah,
do it for my team, but I would
yeah.
never go and ask for myself. And I'm gonna take this, note it down. It's a dear diary moment.
When you go into that year-end discussion, have a post-it note somewhere or just
Yes,
put
dear
it.
diary, Isabella on this date at this time said this. I'm going to put a reminder.
It's like
But
negotiate.
negotiate, yes, yes, absolutely. But before I let you go, I just want to end with a rapid fire. Whatever comes to your mind, just throw it. If you would meet 16 years old Isabel today, what is the one thing you would tell her?
Go for it. Live life to the fullest. Embrace every opportunity.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Um, it's not so much advice, but something that really resonated with me. It's don't mistake kindness for weakness.
My God, that's deep. What is
It,
amazing.
and really something that, I always think, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah, love that.
my motto.
Love that. Is there any book which profoundly inspired you or you recommend everyone to read?
Um, it's quite a recent one, and it's one I've can highly recommend because it does talk about the future of finance. It's called The Catalyst,
Mm-hmm.
Amanda Wick. It looks to the future, but it's also quite a good history lesson. I learned a lot of sort of why things in place, why do we have the system as it is, but I'm really also looking where are we going. I really enjoyed reading that.
Okay, I'll give it a go. What's your go-to self-care routine?
Sleep. I need sleep. I love to sleep. Yes, I if you don't want to see me on few hours sleep, it's not fun.
Can you tell us one woman from the past or present who inspire you the most?
Oh wow, that's a tough one because I don't know, there's not one there's traits I admire in people. So, sometimes lady politicians, Jacinda Ardern or, Michelle Obama or people like that who are really in the very public spotlight and standing up for their cause. So I think it's kind of the bravery, the commitment, and yeah, just really being true to your values despite
Sure.
adversity. Mm.
Okay. Where do you usually turn for your daily dose of knowledge? Any podcasts, any reads, any shows you watch?
Uh, it's not pretty standard, I would say. So just read the FT, the main news outlets, Bloomberg, but then also because of the crypto space, you have great podcasts. You have many more crypto native things like CoinDesk, and I think if we make and we're all in our bubble, and it's hard to step out. Sometimes I still try to read like German media because sometimes even if it's a global topic, it's interesting to see different angles and how this
Perspective.
is reported in the US or in the UK or in Germany or
Yeah.
so. But yeah, no insider tips really. It's very mainstream media.
Okay. Okay. Any network or community apart from 100, apart from the Women in ETF, you would recommend to be a part of?
Yes, for sure, women in ETFs. But I think for every sort of subsector of our industry, you also have a good network. So for women in crypto, there's the Association for Women in Crypto, and so whatever niche you're in, or there's broader organizations. There's one called the Female Forum, and this is across industries. This is across um, just senior women, but there I find it very refreshing also to hear from somebody who's in, I don't know, pharmaceuticals or manufacturing or so I think it's worthwhile within your industry, but sometimes also nice to just step out and learn something new.
Okay, sure. What is the one skill or habit which has been a game changer in your professional or personal life?
I can't call them skill or habit. My children, having kids, that that really changed it. And
Everything.
it's probably a stupid answer to your question, but they becoming a mum taught me really what's important. What really matters.
Priorities. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course they're older now, but I remember the early days where you have a tough deadline and the client's on the phone and you really need to finish this, but you also have to go to the nursery to pick up your child. Sorry, nursery pickup wins. What can
True.
you do? There's another human being you're responsible for. So I don't know. It was just it's also a great way to ground yourself when you're getting a bit big-headed and you think, oh, I have this amazing title and everything. Those little human beings don't care.
They don't care.
So, it's really like all of a sudden you sit on the floor in your jogging bottoms and you're stupid, but I think that was good. That was a
Sure.
good grounding. They bring you back to earth.
For sure. Yeah. What is the best investment you've ever made?
My buying my flat in London against a lot of advice of, oh, this is stupid and the interest rates will come down and blah blah blah. I loved it. I still have it. It's been great. Yeah, so I think you mentioned it earlier from your background where sometimes, people really say no and it's not the right decision, but sometimes you just have to stick with your gut feeling, and I think that was a good one. There were
True.
many bad ones as well, but
But last but not least, what does success mean to you?
it means uh fulfillment of freedom. So really being content in the moment, in what you're doing, feeling you make a difference. I think that really is, yeah, what I would say is sort of my definition of success.
Great. So, on that note, Isabel, thank you so much for this insightful conversation. You remind us that the true financial power isn't about just predicting the next market surge or a market move, but it's also leading with integrity, challenging the default, and also intentionally building tables where everyone is included. And you're a living proof that the most valuable asset in today's economy is not just the money you make, but what impact you create, not just for yourself, but for others. And so thank you for sharing that. And to all the listeners who are listening today, whether you're navigating complexity or chaos in your life or at your work, just remember your voice is your currency, and don't wait for a seat at the table. Just build your own and then invest in your vision and go and achieve all your dreams. And until next time, stay financially independent and stay powerful. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to You Are a Force. Hit subscribe and join us next week for more powerful stories from women rewriting the rules. Until then, keep building, keep leading, and remember, you are a force.